We're gonna start with an icon, Joan Didion, The Year of Magical Thinking. This is a memoir. This book is really sad. It's about her husband dying and at the same time, her adult daughter, being very ill and hospitalized. Her husband dies very suddenly. She describes it as they came home for the day, they were at their kitchen table and he was there 1 minute, the next, gone. It's a very intimate memoir about how she deals with the aftermath of the death of her husband and then also her child being sick, who's not really a child anymore, but those are two very big, difficult things to deal with. I remember reading this book the first time and thinking, wow, I don't want to ever love anybody because I could lose it and this could happen to me. She's going through the memories she has with her husband and all the things that she's going to miss about him, and it's just so devastating knowing his fate and also then knowing what she has to live through without him. But by the time you get to the end of the book, you realize, like, obviously loving is worth it even if it is possible that it will be lost. The next book is one of my favorite books of all time, and I have this like really unassuming version of it because I got it used, but it's Educated by Tara Westover. Maybe I'll do this. This is a memoir. It's also a really popular memoir. For those that don't know, Tara grew up in Idaho in a, I'm pretty sure, Mormon family, and she was homeschooled. She had a lot of siblings, and her family, predominantly her dad, spread a lot of misinformation to their kids, and because they were homeschooled, that's all they knew, and they're just raised to believe a lot of really crazy things that just don't make any sense. Tara ends up finding a way to actually go to school once she's a little bit older, and she gets like an actual education. Granted, it is a Mormon education, so it is still very biased, but it is way different than what her family raised her to believe, and she starts kind of like questioning where she grew up and all the things that she was taught. Okay, I just looked it up because I need a fact check. She first went to school at 19 when she went to BYU. Then she got her master's in philosophy, I believe, from Trinity, and then she got her PhD at Cambridge. So she like got the most education you could ever get. And I think the most inspiring thing for me about this book was that education is such a valuable thing. I just thought it was really inspiring how she grappled with her past and how that kind of meshed with her future and what she was learning about her past, because on one hand, it's her family who raised her, who brought her into this world, but on the other hand, they taught her these very damaging things about herself and her life that are just not true. I just personally found a lot of inspiration from this book about leaving your hometown and how she deals with that like imposter syndrome. There's a quote in this book that I think about all the time because it actually like altered my brain chemistry. So when she's at Cambridge, I believe, she's talking to one of her professors and she's like, girl, I just don't feel like I belong here. She just feels really like afraid that once she leaves school or when she graduates, that she's gonna like revert back to where she came from. And I think she's also questioning if like that is who she is, like her family and where she came from, if like that is her, and she's kind of just like impersonating like a well-educated person who's going to a nice school in the UK. Her professor tells her, it's on page 242, "You must stop yourself from thinking like that," Dr. Carey said, his voice raised. "You are not fool's gold, shining only under a particular light. Whomever you become, whatever you make yourself into, that is who you always were. It was always in you, not in Cambridge, but in you. You are gold. And returning to BYU or even to that mountain that you came from will not change who you are. It may change how others see you. It may even change how you see yourself. Even gold appears dull in some lighting. But that is the illusion, and it always was." Okay, he went off. He really went off with that. I think there's so many things you can take out of it, but what I really took out of it is how the place you come from does not have to be who you are and who you become. I also think it's really inspiring when he said, whatever you become, like, that is who you were meant to be. Just because you were born in this place, into this family, does not mean that, like, that is your destiny. You know, like, you don't have to turn into your mother. You don't have to turn into your father. You might have always been destined for something greater. You just, like, had to find it somewhere else. Whatever that is. It also just brings to the forefront of your mind that you should be really thankful for the fact that you could get any education. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This book is about a man named Jason who gets kidnapped one night and sent into this parallel world, but he gets kidnapped by himself, by a version of himself from another dimension. He basically spends the whole book trying to get back to his original version of his life. So he's going to like Jason 2, Jason 3, Jason 4. Like there's infinite Jasons. And in each one, there's different circumstances. Like in one of them, he has the dream job. And in another one, he has a bigger house. He has more money. Like all of these things he wasn't happy with in his original life. He's like, oh, I could have them. At first, he's kind of like, okay, maybe this is what I want. He ends up just kind of wanting to get back to the life he already had. When I read this as a 14-year-old, I was like, shit, I want to get back to my wife too. It makes the mundane things about life seem so beautiful. I mean, yeah, seeing it in this context where you're so far away, you're so close yet so far, you're in the same house, but it's not really your wife, it's not your son, really makes you realize like you took a lot of things for granted. And I think that is the overarching theme of this video, is in order to find that zest for life again, you just have to see everything that's already right in front of you and stop taking it for granted. But I think it's easier when it's in a format like this, when you can imagine it. I feel like my mom always used to tell me, like, don't take things for granted because you have a lot of things you should be grateful for, but when your mom tells you something, like, you don't want to listen to that. I think this is also a show. I have not watched it, but I've heard it's pretty good, I think. This book, Cereus Blooms at Night, is my last book. It's a really endearing story about this woman who's kind of like known in her town as the crazy woman who like lives in a really weird house. She's got some unruly garden outside. There's a lot of rumors circulating about her family from when she was younger, and she ends up being put in this like psychiatric home. Everyone's kind of afraid of her. They're like not really treating her like a human, and this one nurse who's very sweet and patient kind of takes her in under his wing. He's the only one that she really responds to and like seems to like. They grow this really sweet friendship, and then she kind of tells him the whole story of what happened to her. Really heartbreaking, but not the kind of heartbreaking that you read and you can't recover from. Like, it feels very hopeful at the end. Ultimately, it's a story about resilience. The Cereus flower is a flower that only blooms at night when it's dark, and so I think that's metaphorical for the resilience of the characters in the story. I'm gonna teach for a second because I had to read this for a class, and I made this little handout and I think it's really cute. I might as well like put my tuition money to good use. Okay, so a little bit about the author, because I feel like that's also important. She was born in Dublin to Trinidadian parents, but then her mother grew very ill after childbirth, so she was moved to Trinidad, raised by her maternal grandmother, and then after 5 years her parents moved to Trinidad, and then she went to live with them. But she was like, all she had ever known was her grandparents, and so she always kind of felt a little bit removed from her family. She was never able to make sense of her experiences until she found her voice in her writing. What I really like about the book is how it dives into the connection between nature and humans. I like this quote too. I might just be all over the place, but at the heart of theology there is a premise. They will try to tell you otherwise, but if one listens carefully, there is a premise that we humans are the primary sun around which the entire universe revolves. Unstated but certainly implied is the assumption that humans are by far superior to the rest of all nature, and that's why we are the inheritance of the earth. Arrogant, isn't it? What's more, not all humans are part of the sun. Some of us are considered to be much lesser than others, especially if we are not wetland. Wetland is like the fictional version of like America or the UK colonizer's homeland, or European or full-blooded white. It's really interesting too, because you learn a lot about different members of the family, and I actually wish I could just have a book club about this book now that I'm doing this, because there's so much I want to say, but like you have to read the book first. Let me also go on a rant. I am reading this book right now, Strangers by Belle Burden. Also accidentally ordered the large print, so it's like fucking massive. After reading Cereus Blooms at Night, I kind of just realized like, well, I didn't realize until I started reading Strangers, I don't care about a lot of what people have to say. If you don't know what Strangers is about, it is this woman's memoir about her divorce and how one day her husband admitted he had been cheating on her and wanted to leave her for this new woman, and he just like walked out and didn't want custody of the kids. Like, it was really sudden, which is shocking and terrifying. But the more I read the book, the more I realize it's kind of just this woman being like, yeah, we had so many houses and so much money, and I never once looked at the bill when I went to a restaurant. I just put my card down and paid. And when he left me, like, we were at our house on our private beach, and I think he went to our other apartment in New York. I'm trying so hard to like it because I'm reading it for a book club, so I like want to be a part of the book club and talk about it. But why do I care about your story? And I'm sorry if that's harsh. I just like, you have never struggled a day in your life. You're a white woman who grew up with money. You literally said you never worried about money once. I just really struggle with the fact that like this is on more shelves and this is being promoted more than I've seen Cereus Blooms at Night. Though granted, this came out obviously not recently, so I could just be talking out of my ass. Oh my gosh, 1996. So, okay, I mean, like, I could be wrong. Maybe this was talked about more, but even then, like, I don't really see it on shelves that often. Okay, I think I'm gonna regret saying all this, but whatever. Actually, I'm gonna stop talking. Okay, we're gonna move on to movies now, which is a new topic for us. I've never talked about movies before, but I have two really gorgeous films that I think about all the time. They really were movies that, like, I watched them and they put a new filter over how I look at life. First one is About Time. Okay, so this was released in 2013, directed by Richard Curtis, starring Domhnall Gleeson, Rachel McAdams, Bill Nye, and Margot Robbie. It's basically about this man, Domhnall Gleeson, who is struggling to find a girlfriend. He's got no game. The day after New Year's, his dad decides to tell him that all of the men in his family have the ability to time travel. It's not a very like flashy, like sci-fi ability. It's just kind of like, quite literally, you stand in a closet, you close your eyes and you think about where you want to go, and then you are there. And it's only for the men in the family for some reason, which is a bit problematic. But anyway, so he learns that he has this ability and he uses it to get a girlfriend. I pulled up this photo of him and his father, blurry off photo, and then he meets Rachel McAdams, who he ends up wanting to court. Why am I describing it like that? He falls in love with her, and he basically uses his time traveling abilities to not fumble as much as he does. It's really cute. They end up like falling in love and having a really beautiful life together. Spoiler alert. I think you should still watch the movie. This isn't like a huge spoiler because I think the best part of the movie is the experience of it, not necessarily what happens at the end. He decides to stop time traveling. He says, I just treat every day like I came back here deliberately for this day and for this specific moment. That specific line in the movie has stuck with me ever since I watched it, because like I would see this moment so differently if I thought I came back here for the specific moment. And I do think about like all the times and places I would go back to, and I do think like when I'm 40 I'm gonna be like, wow, I wish I could go back to being 22, living in my first post-grad place. If I kind of try to see my life through that lens, then everything is way more beautiful and fun. But yes, this is one of my all-time favorite movies. Also, the soundtrack is amazing. This next one, if you know me, this is like not a surprise at all. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Actually, have to show you guys my tattoo. This tattoo of a scene from the movie when they're running to the house on the beach. Came out in 2004, directed by Michael Gondry, starring Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, Kirsten Dunst, Mark Ruffalo, Elijah Wood. There's actually so many people in this movie. But the two stars are Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, and I think that they're brilliant because they've like swapped personalities. Like Kate Winslet is hyper spaz all over the place, and Jim Carrey is like reserved and quiet and cool. You would never see that anywhere else. The movie is basically about Joel, played by Jim Carrey, and Clementine, played by Kate Winslet. They start dating, and then a few years later they break up. There's like this procedure where you can have your memories erased, and so Clementine decides to erase Joel from her memory. So then when he runs into her at the bookstore, she doesn't remember him. Can you imagine running into your ex and they don't remember you? Out of spite and because he's petty, Joel also decides to erase Clementine. The way that the procedure works is you basically like relive each memory before it gets erased. So like the first time they meet, he like relives it, and then poof, it's gone. It's also kind of in the same vein as About Time, where it's not like flashy sci-fi, it's just kind of like a detail of the story. Like in this world, this is the same thing as like getting a root canal. He's getting the memories erased, and at first he's like, yeah, I'm chill, this is fine. Then he starts getting into like the nitty-gritty and reliving all these things, and he's like, wait, maybe I do want to keep these memories. Maybe it's not going to work out and we're not together and she doesn't love me. These memories made me who I am. You just see him try to cling on to all these memories. When you watch it too, you're like, damn. I first watched this in my first year of college before I went to film school, when I just went to a school in Colorado. And we watched it in this like really old ass building on the edge of campus that was like literally next to houses. Like it doesn't even look like it's part of campus. This building was built in like the 60s probably, and it's falling apart and it smells like it. And this movie is like from 2004 and it's so nostalgic. The night before I watched this movie for class, I had gotten broken up with. And if you've watched this movie, you know how bad that is to see this movie after you get dumped. But I think it was the best thing that I could have watched. It actually changed my life. I just think like if I, as a person, became a movie, it would be this. I saw it and I was like, damn, I should have thought of that. I could have made that. Anyway, I hope that these books and movies spark some life back into you. And thanks for watching. You can follow me on Goodreads and Letterboxd. I will link that now too. Okay, bye.